Games are a mysterious form of modern magic, and for the longest time, I've played them, I've loved them, had sincerely profound experiences with them, but never really understood them. How can endless lines of code and images and audio and video make all that cool stuff happen? The pew-pews and the jumping in that. My name is Kondor, and this is a video all about making my first 5 games and my game dev journey so far. I've always wanted to get into game dev, but always believed that I was too stupid. I didn't have the right tools or resources, or perhaps I was too stupid. But then I saw a bunch of YouTube videos by people like Danny, Blackthorn Prod, and DevDuck, and I realized these guys seem really smart. I don't think I can do this. But even stupid people can get inspired. And so at the start of the year, I finally decided that I, Luke Kondor, was going to figure out game development. A little while back, I saw a cool talk on YouTube given by a chap called Andrew Price called The Habits of Effective Artists. The gist was that he got pretty good at doing arts in about 6 months, maybe it was a year, I can't quite remember, but he thanked his speedy learning skills to the following tenets. 1. Daily work, to consistently work on the craft. 2. Volume, not perfection, to work on lots of projects and get better and better and not try and make every little bitty detail absolutely perfect. Number 3, steal and steal well. So from great artists out there, steal their pencils and pens and that. Number 4, conscious learning. So you have to actually put effort into reading documentation, reading tutorials, and actually developing the skill set. Number 5, rest, because it's very important to take a nap at least 3 times a day. Number 6, feedback. Get feedback from other people, from listeners, from readers, from professional feedback givers. And number 7, create what you love. So on top of that, I also found a pretty great video on YouTube from a guy called Code Monkey. He lays out a plan for becoming a game dev in 2020, which I'm going to try and follow as best I can. It seems as good a plan as any. So comparing both of these videos, the main lesson I got was that you shouldn't start out on a big project. You should start out making lots of small games and finish them. So that's what I did. Over the past 2 months, I've made 5 games using the Unity game engine and the C# scripting language. Not all of them are good. In fact, one of them I now refer to as the game I no longer talk about. But my hope is that if you're also, like me, a stupid person, then you too can make games. If you're a smart person, then you can make games a lot quicker and a lot better than I can. One final note before I delve a little deeper into the games that I made. In this first couple of months, the games I made were pretty much all born out of tutorials, the majority of which were from this incredible Udemy course put out by GameDev.tv. Their support community has really helped me out when the, hit the fan. I'll link to the course in the show notes, and I very much recommend you at least check it out. Anyway, game number 1, You're Going to Die. On the 16th of January 2020, I wrote down the following in my journal. Yes, I'm the kind of guy who keeps a journal. What of it? Dear Diary, I want to start making a few games. It's a terrifying prospect. I was doing a text adventure tutorial, so let's see if I can make something interesting or fun out of that. And away I went. You're Going to Die is a text adventure game, a sort of philosophical comedy bizarro game in which you will definitely die. I think a lot of people start out doing text adventure games because they are relatively easy. Well, I say that, but looking upon Unity for the first time feels a little like landing on some sort of alien planet. There are words and phrases that you don't recognize, and endless seas of grey, and nothing makes sense anymore. Down is up, forwards is backwards, and it took me 2 hours to add a font. A font. 2 hours to add a font. I am stupid. Anyway, so I followed the tutorial fairly closely in the beginning, but when the idea for the game started to take hold and inspiration struck me, I couldn't help myself. I locked myself away for several hours a night, personalizing the game, breaking down the code and rebuilding it, learning how the pieces were put together, sort of like how Dr. Manhattan figured out how to reconstruct himself from nothing. I went to some dark places trying to add some audio to this game. Specifically, I wanted to trigger a certain type of audio at the win state of the game. I spent 5 hours digging through tutorials, trying to work out the C#, testing, retesting, pulling what little hair I had out, screaming, and eventually I gave up all hope. I thought, I just can't do this. I'm just not the kind of person who can figure this stuff out. Maybe I am too stupid. Maybe I should get a job as a traffic cone or some sort of bollard. But then Suddenly I could see what I was doing. It all came together. I typed up some more code and it was done. I could see the woods for the trees and the audio trigger worked. It was actually a pretty great feeling. I felt like Einstein after he discovered the formula and said Eureka, but way better. Einstein only figured out the theory of relativity. I figured out how to make a game make a noise when the player wins. So anyway, once done, I finished it all up, added some polish and posted it up on itch.io. So you can play it today if you want to. I didn't expect anyone to play it or enjoy it, but I did get some really encouraging responses. People were actually recording playthroughs of the game, leaving nice comments, being right awesome dudes and dudettes. It was very inspiring to say the least. So game number 2, Youre Gonna Die. Mainly based on a second tutorial in the GameDev course. The main idea for this one was to build a number wizard game. You think of a number and the game uses some simple math and some jazzy code and it guesses the number, leaving the player gobsmacked at how the game could read their mind. Once again, about halfway through the tutorial, inspiration struck and I decided that simply following along with the tutorial would not be enough. Once again, I was going to have to break myself. I decided to change the game from a number guessing wizard to an exploding bomb sort of game in which a little guy who is me but with a stick body, so me, has lost the 4-digit bomb disarm code. You, the player, know the code and Duke has 20 seconds to figure it out and you have to guide him towards the right answer. If you don't, he doesn't get the code. Youre Gonna Die. This game is very simple and super short, but I think it's actually pretty fun to play and I had a lot of fun making the music for it. Overall, I don't think there's much of a game to it, but I could see it as being a mini game contained within a much larger, much sort of better game. You know? This one I also uploaded to itch.io, so feel free to play it if you fancy it. I mean, it will literally take you about 30 seconds to play it, so, you know, do or don't. There is no maybe. Game number 3, Face Your Faces. Face Your Faces is a block breaker style game in which you punch my face and smash it into my other, more evil faces. I must have been completely in the zone whilst working on this game because I made no notes at all, or I've lost them, I don't know. Either way, the whole thing is a bit of a blur, but it was my first introduction with things that actually move on the screen, no longer limited to the confines of text or UI buttons. Finally, my game objects could fly free. From this game, I learned that you can make any game project a little more interesting by changing every single sprite on the game to your own face. This was a fun game to work on, though I have to admit, I wasn't quite as proud of this one as the first two. Something about it seemed somewhat buggy to me. It's a pretty unstable game. You never know what's going to happen when you press play. You can play that one if you want. I maybe wouldn't recommend it as much as the first two, but there we go. Game number 4, Paper Defender. Paper Defender started out life as a bog standard laser defender shooter game, and it still is, but you know, it's now made of paper. You take control of Origami Johnson and you fight off the evil crap drawings or something or other. When I started working through this game, it was weird how natural the coding started to feel. The jumble of words and digits and semicolons was starting to look almost normal. Fairly early on, I realized that I wanted to reskin the game and add the doodle look to it all. I'd experimented with animation in the past in which I'd basically draw really terrible drawings into my notebook and I'd take a photo and then I'd tronify it into the computer. It's a very technical process. You take a picture of it with your phone, use a USB cable, and then you shoot the image into your computer. Very, very technical. At some point, I got some of my friends at work to play the game, and it was amazing to see them blasting off to fight in the paper wars against the Doodle Revolt, and they seemed to genuinely enjoy it. But then, they came back with notes. Add an explosion effect, they said. Add a high score feature, they demanded. Do this, do that, give us your soul. Fine, I said, and I got to work. After making a list of features and working through it, I started to realize something. I'd been making games for 5 weeks by this point, and it started to feel like I was actually doing it. I was implementing new features, designing and creating new concepts. I was troubleshooting and fixing bugs as and when they came up. And I think that was it. That's what game dev was or is, right? I'll come back to Paper Defender in a second, but before I do, I need to talk about game number 5, the game we no longer talk about. By this point, I was beginning to feel a lot more confident with the whole process. I was only 6 weeks into the process, so I jumped into another smaller game project. This was another GameDev.tv Unity course module, and we were going to make a Plants vs Zombies inspired game called Glitch Garden, which I now refer to as the game we no longer talk about. But let's start with the positives. Working on this game taught me about sprite sheets, animations. It gave me a whole new range of scripting tools to use, but, and it's a big but, I hated making this game. Maybe I missed a step or two along the way, maybe I'd missed a line of code or something. Whatever it was, it made it every time I added something to this game, it broke in some randomly seemingly unrelated way. I added a line of code here, suddenly all my game objects disappeared. I added a line of code there, and for some reason Visual Studio namespaces were no longer working. I added a menu button in a single scene, and for some reason all of the text in the entire game in every scene suddenly turned black. All of it. Even though it said it was yellow, it was still black. What? I worked through this game and got it to a functional state, but I dragged my heels along the way. I'm not going to lie, I hated this game. I'm glad that I made it. After all, I learned a lot, but it reminded me of one of the lessons from Andrew Price's sort of TED Talk thing I spoke about at the start of the video. Create what you love. I don't play Plants vs Zombies type games. Some people love them. I'm not one of those people. Not loving what you're creating makes every little step feel like wading through concrete after a large Sunday dinner. It ruins momentum. My biggest takeaway for this game is yes, push through the hard stuff because you'll learn a lot, but focus more on the stuff that really inspires you. You'll work harder, you'll work quicker, and will be way more involved in the process along the way. For me, this happened with the text adventure game and my paper defender game. I struggled not to keep working on those games. I jumped out of bed in the mornings to work on those games. A nun tried to stop me working on those games and I punched her in the face. That's the kind of project you should be working on. The one that you would happily punch a nun in the face for. Anyway, if you're looking to get into game dev, I can't recommend this course enough. I'll link in the descriptions below. They've got a fantastic community. If you ever get super stuck, you can post a little question in the Q&A bit, and they will come back to you and they will support you and help you figure it out. But with the final game, I was not in the right headspace to be trying to fix that thing. I wanted to kill it. I very much wanted it to be dead. So anyway, I'll link in the description below. I got it for a discounted rate, and I'm sure if you time it right, you can get it at the same low price. But that is that. As of writing this down, I'm now 2 months into game dev. It's ridiculous to think how much I've learned and how stupid I still am. But at least I have a much better idea of the process now. Now I think I want to try something a little bigger. Part of me thinks I should go back and flesh out Paper Defender a little more. Add a story, add some levels, boss fights. Or do I go ahead and start something completely new? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe you can help me decide. Let me know in the comments or whatever below. But this is a new video. I'm not used to doing this. If you enjoyed it, I might make some more. I might try and do some of those devlogs that I've been watching so much of recently. So subscribe, like, whatever. Doesn't matter, does it really? So, yeah. Alright. Speak to you soon. Bye. Oh, maybe follow me on Twitter. @ Luke of Kondor, Kondor. Don't. Alright.